Hey everyone, how you doing today? As promised in our expert series, we are bringing on Dana from Himlane. How you doing, Dana?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Michael.
Absolutely. We're going to change it up a little bit. The last, I don't know, 4 or 5 months or so, I've been beating you up for topics and asking you questions. We're going to flip this over a little bit and you're going to ask me some questions because, again, we've had a relationship before this, did some work at Himlane, gave you some ideas of what I was doing. And I thought you should ask me those questions so people can see what you were looking for as you were developing and building Himlane.
Yeah, great. And yeah, Michael, we go back, I think 4 or 5 years ago was when I first connected with you. And that's really where I see a lot of value of real estate investors using Hemlane. So I'd love to hear from you today just how you started with those first 2 to 3 rentals, what was on your mind, what you went through, and specifically also the property management experience.
Yeah, so I'm glad this is really where we started. And my experience is probably like a lot of investors. And again, you got to remember, I consider I didn't technically invest out of state. I invested 2.5 hours away. For me, it might as well have been out of state. I never lived in the city. I knew no one. It was a 5 hour round trip to see one house, for example. I mean, you can get a lot of places in 2.5 hours. It's obviously cheaper, right? I guess I can get there in one full tank of gas and back. So it's not an airplane flight, but for all intents and purposes, to me, it was like an out of state city. So what that meant is I had some choices to make, right? Buying that first house was kind of easy, right? It hit my ratio and I bought it, but that's when the real work started. That's when you just, or at least I kept having aha moments. And it was my first experience, right? Nobody in my family had ever been a landlord. I didn't have anybody to ask. I just got the first property manager I knew. And if anybody's read my book, I fired the first 5, right? It wasn't pleasant. And, I've had a couple of podcast interviews recently, and this is why I wanted to talk to you about this, because people need to realize that what it really boiled down to for us, where we went from 0 to 6 properties, was we had to focus. My wife and I had extremely busy jobs. We chose to invest in a market that was really far away, right? 2.5 hours one way, 5 hours round trip. So what did we do? I focused on finding deals. That's all I had time for. 20 minutes a day, finding deals. Olivia, she started doing the books and double checking the property managers, which in the beginning, we had to fire them. So you should all realize what happened, right? So when I think about what Himlane needs to be for folks in what I shared all those years ago, is it needs to be that vehicle that smooths that process, eases communication, provides that audit trail, um, and really saves time, right? That's the
Yeah.
big thing that we were stumbling over that first 3 years, is we were just using our scarce time so poorly. And I mean, you go from property manager A to property manager B, and you got to start from scratch, and they got a different this and a different that. And it's just, and then they lose the lease, and that property manager doesn't want to give it to this person because they have a bad relationship and they used to work together. And I mean, all this kind of drama. And again, I never lived in the city. I knew no one. Himlane would have made that easier to transition, right? Because it's all
Yeah.
there, and probably would have saved us some gray hairs. But yeah, the biggest thing for me is I just couldn't worry about it. I had a crazy day job. I was helping raise our daughter. I could find enough time to look at my deals, which is what I teach and talk about. But it almost feels like, looking back, I gave up control and I just hoped, and hope's not a strategy. And yeah, that's eye opening for me.
Yeah, and I think that point of the lease document, right? You want the leasing agent or the property manager to put that together, but it's very apparent if you have a system in place that's collaborative that you can see there's a little task that says a lease hasn't been uploaded for these tenants. Like, we need something in the system, something that won't get lost offline or on someone's hard drive. Because sure enough, I've seen property managers who carry around hard drives,
Yeah.
and I don't think they understand that the cloud is actually secure
The cloud
these
is
days.
over there. Yeah. You don't have to have this little orange box. Yeah. It's fine.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
actually really interested to hear also. I have one follow-up question on
Sure.
that. You had mentioned firing the property managers.
Mhm.
At what point did you get to, like, what made you decide? Because to your point, it's a lot. When you fire a property manager, it's
No.
like they're collecting your rent. You then have to communicate to all the tenants, or the new property manager has to. That rent is now going to this new property manager. It's a new system and process. It disrupts your income, right? Your
Oh.
cash flow there. What made you get to the point with every single one that you said, okay, now is the
Mhm.
time to do a transition?
Yeah, really. So there's really kind of three stories. Two of them are repeated. One was kind of an oddball one. First and foremost, what I consider theft, they may consider fudging the numbers, right? Depending on your
Wow.
level of whatnot. Right. I remember one time, I think one of them was a water heater that, they will say got double billed, not cool. As far as I'm concerned, and oh, by the way, when we went back to the tenant with the new property manager, the water heater had never been replaced. So clearly was theft. Right. So they were just
Wow.
manufacturing, whatnot. So theft happened twice. And then the other similar thing was poor communication.
Mhm.
All right. I live in a world of sales back when I had a career. And I think it's true with properties is, bad news doesn't get better with time. But when you live 2.5 hours away, might as well be out of state. The person that is your representative there probably they don't want to tell you bad news. Nobody wants to tell you bad news. So if they could look at a situation and squint their eyes and twist their head and stand on one foot to make it sound good, that's what they did. They bent over abnormally to make the situation sound as rosy as possible. So I wouldn't worry about it when I'm in Tokyo or Sydney or Rio de Janeiro or wherever I was. And that's not how I roll, right? I want to, I'm okay to deal with the problem, right? If there's a roof leak and, it's not a big deal. They'll just, they'll put a tarp over it or whatever. And suddenly you realize that it's not a roof leak. It's a freaking gaping hole by the swamp cooler that's only going to get worse. And it's just, yeah, poor communication is a bugaboo of mine. And then the last one was, we had started doing 1031 exchanges and getting bigger. And at the time, that property manager was making a lot of money selling houses. So he diverted his attention to selling houses because you make a lot more on commission than you do with, 9 or 10% property managers. So I hate that kind of split focus. So those were the reasons why we let them go. And really it boils down to why Hemlane will help a lot of newbies is you only have so much time. You have to value your time. And for lots of them, stress, right? Newbie investors, anything you could do to mitigate stress, I think Hemlane would have helped us way back in the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Well, thanks for that, Michael. And sorry to hear about that or the swamp cooler situation, as well as the water heater.
Eh,
But now it seems like things are going a lot better for you, and people can learn a lot.
yeah, there you go. Well, Dana, folks that follow this channel can get a 30-day trial of Hemlane. Where do they go?
They go to hemlane.com. And when you sign in there, make sure that you say that you heard about us on One Rental at a Time.
Folks, do yourself a favor. Go get that 30-day free trial. It's free, free, free. Get it, play with it. Dana's done a great job. Look at the playlist on the channel. She's shown you the app. There's so much stuff there that frankly, I didn't even appreciate as we started doing these things. So go get that 30-day trial, check it out, have some fun. Thanks, Dana.
Oh, thanks.